Greetings, my friends. Thanks for joining us. Many people have asked us when they come into our Salon Contemporary program what the differences are in terms of the haircuts that we teach. And so I wanted you to see what a contemporary haircut looks like. It's basically putting a few patterns together. We're going to make it contemporary, meaning quite modern, but still salon friendly. So stick around, hope you enjoy. So one of the haircuts that's quite popular right now in salons are shapes that are a lot shorter around the underneath perimeter of the head and longer through the top. Now there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this, but what I wanted to show you here was a slightly more contemporary way of approaching it. So we're going to look at this shape in a way that still gives you that overall feel of that kind of short underneath, longer through the top look, but with a slight quirkiness to it. So what we're doing here is we're working with my model Mary's natural part. So this is her natural part. And if we go a little further down, you can actually see that this is kind of coming through all the way back to her natural growth. So it's coming through to the back, and then on the opposite side of her part, you can see that it kind of works its way down parallel to the highest point on the side of her head, and then across to right where the recession is. Now on the other side, I paralleled it again, and then just came right with a soft diagonal line that starts to what we call the midpoint, so somewhere between the high point and the natural growth or the flower, and then from there again came down to her highest point on the side of the head, or what we call the anchor point. So by having that skewness, what's going to happen is I'm going to be able to have a slight asymmetry where I'm going to have a bit more weight on this side. I'm going to be tighter on this side, but have the weight on the top lay over the shortness. Because what tends to happen is that if both sides are balanced and the top lays over that extra weight, all of this weight here is there for absolutely no reason. So by collapsing this in, taking this in, and this lays over it, it's going to give it a much more balanced feel. And instead of having the weight fall forward, I'm going to have this kind of point that comes in the back, because most of these haircuts that we've been seeing has this point through the front, or this weight through the front, but I'm going to push it back, so when she pushes it off to the side, her length is going to kick from right behind the ear. So that's basically the sectioning, and this is a pretty classic section to get this nice little skewed version of our classic shorter underneath and longer through the top. I'm going to start on the underneath compartments, so basically on the opposite side of her part. And I'm going to work with a pattern that we call the high revolving pattern. So it's a section that's quite steep, and it rolls from the front and starts working its way into the back area. So you're really rolling around the head shape. I'm going to start it off at approximately, I'd say about an inch, 3/4 to an inch in length. And I'm going to be over directing to the previous, so I'm going to increase my weight as I work my way down. So I'm going to do this 3/4 of the way and really tighten that nape pin as well. So you'll see me really follow the natural contour of the head. So you'll see here my fingers are going to be nice and flat, and then as I work my way around with my revolving pattern, I'm going to start to roll into the nape. I'm going to do this 3/4 and then start on the opposite side. So now that I've done the first side and that I've stopped 3/4 of the way, I haven't quite finished my perimeter, which I plan to do later. At this point, I'm going to start my second side. Now, if this was a fundamental shape or a classic interpretation of this pattern, I would restart it at the front and work it all the way back past the center. But because this is a contemporary version and a slight adapted version, I sectioned off the front, and now I'm going to start directly behind the ear and work the back compartment only, exactly in the same manner, but I'm going to bypass that front. So now the question is, how do I get the same length and get my balance right, basically by gauging. So what we need to do is we need to go onto the opposite side, pick up that first section that you did. You need to gauge your length, so basically get a good feel for how long the section is, and then just work on from the second side and do exactly the same thing. So now that I've done the second side, gauged my length, made sure that I have the same balance on the underneath, I'm going to work into this front compartment that I had sectioned out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this drop out, and then based on this last section here, right at this disconnection, I'm going to basically now work with a pivotal technique. So I'm going to pivot from this point, and I'm going to over direct back a little bit each time so that I'm increasing a little bit of length so she ends up with a very short, sharp little bob line. So starting from this point, using a pivot, and then over directing to the previous or more if need be, if it's a little bit weaker through the front, so that we're increasing some length and some weight. So now that I've done the side compartment and I've pivoted to the front with some over direction so that I could keep some length and some weight, before I get to the top, I'm going to go through and do all of my perimeter cleaning. So I'm going to go in here first and put a really nice hard line. On the other side, I'm going to work around the ear and through the back area. I'm just going to do some soft scissor over comb. So now that the perimeter has been detailed the way that I saw it, in this case I went fairly graphic with a fairly graphic back with a little scissor over comb. Of course, this is all to your choice and to your client's choice. Now we're going to work with our top. So we're going to basically work so that the main weight and length sits here instead of sitting at the front. As I explained earlier, most of these shapes tend to get longer through the front and shorter through the back. I'm going to shift this over, and to do that, I'm basically going to be, again, working with revolving sections. So these sections are going to roll around the head, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain quite a bit of her length. I'm just really going to clean a lot of this, and I'm going to work it with an inversion. So I'm going to keep revolving around and inverting up and out. So that will automatically create the weight back here. So I finished the top, working with my revolving sectioning, over directing to the front, to the previous, and making sure that I had enough weight behind the ear. Using the length that she pretty much had, and then just working with a downward line, chipping into it, slicing into it a little bit. Now I'm going to blow dry her hair. I'm going to finish it smooth at first. I'm going to do my finishing, slice cutting, do everything that I need to do to get the amount of texture that I need based on her type of hair. And then we're going to play around with it and have a second look after. So we're going to blow dry it and do the finishing after.